If you want to up your pistol shooting game, you're going to burn through a lot of ammo, but that's a great problem to have. Gavin Gear here from UltimateReloader.com. I find it astounding that top-level competitive shooters will burn through upwards of 100,000 rounds per year to get to the level they need to get to be at the top of the heap. That is absolutely amazing. While I might not have the goal to get there, I'm actively working on my pistol shooting game and I'm having a ton of fun doing it. In the last video you saw, we took the Mark 7 Evolution manual 10-station progressive reloading press. We got it unboxed, we got it set up, and I got it nearly up to what I would consider maximum efficiency in terms of utilizing all the stations that you're going to need. And we had one key thing that we were missing, and that is a powder check and bullet feed combination. So in this video, we're going to look at the Mr. Bullet Feeder for 9mm, which is what we're loading on the Evolution, and I'm also going to add the double alpha magnetic powder check. These are very important to go together. Once you get a bullet feeder in place, you're not going to have the ability to check your powder level the same way, and safety is paramount. So let's get this box open and see what's inside so that we can get this press up to its optimal efficiency level. Okay, so we gotta just show you guys what's in here. We've got a bunch of peanuts that are going to go everywhere. Spring drop tube. Whoop, here's the unit itself. Okay. Ooh, Mr. Bullet Feeder by Double Alpha. Bracket, user guide. Okay, it looks like this is the basic bits. You get the feed bowl out of its box. Oh, it's nice aluminum. Believe it or not, this is the first time that I've had my hands on one of these units. I've been really looking forward to this. The spring drop tube. Okay, might as well get everything out of their boxes, right? Okay, we've got the potentiometer, that's for the variable speed control. Power adapter. And then we've got the actual die and drop tube with the shut-off switch. Okay, so I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna read the instructions before I put this together, and we'll guide you through that process of getting everything completely installed on the press, dialed in, and we're gonna be loading 9mm like nobody's business. Before we install the Mr. Bullet Feeder on the press, let's do a quick run through of the double alpha magnetic powder check. When you take this powder check out of the packaging, you're going to see everything you need to check pistol powder charges or rifle powder charges. And the first thing I did was to take the magnet off the shaft. You may need to crack the set screw. And then also this riser, which is for rifle applications. We'll get to that in a future video. Now, setup is really easy. You're going to take a charged case, place it in the powder check station, lower the press handle, and then screw the die in until you see this disc lift off of the die body. That's going to activate an internal switch in the magnetic powder check that's going to basically look for an appropriate vertical orientation for the magnet sensor. Now we're going to slip the magnet down and then find where it's going to beep on the low side, find where it's going to beep on the high side, find the middle, and then tighten the set screw. You can check it by cycling the press handle near basically where the stroke is going to engage it a few times to make sure that it's not going to beep. So it's very quick to install. And what you want to do is test your setup. Here I've got what would be a squib load. I've got a case with no powder in it. We get a beep there. That's good. Magnet was too low. Now I've got a case where I've got it filled almost to the top with powder, simulating an overcharge. And that beeps as well. So we're good on the high side and on the low side. There's also two sensitivity settings depending on how granular you want to get with your powder checks. This is good peace of mind because we're putting a bullet feeder on here. We're going to get things cranked up quite a bit, and I can't afford a squib load or a double charge. Now let's set up the bullet feeder. Well, I got everything unpacked and laid out nicely. Let's walk through and review what's included with this kit. You do order it caliber specific, and you can order conversions for different calibers. This set is set up for 9mm or 38, like 38 special. And here's what we've got. We've got the collator, which is the motorized bowl where the bullets sit, they get collated, oriented properly, and dropped. We've got the dropper and the spring drop tube. The spring drop tube is the interface between the dropper assembly and the collator. We've got a variable speed control and power supply, the power cord. The mounting bracket mounts to the case feed bowl. Mounting hardware, ball bearings for the dropper assembly, that's a part of the internal mechanism. We've got the owner's manual, and we've got the case for the dropper assembly. Now let's put it together. The first step for assembly is to get the mounting bracket put together. There's two bracket pieces that are held together with a bolt that has a nylock conventional washer and a star washer. This is so that you can set the angle of the bullet feed bowl and not have it loosen up on you. Then there's two clamp bolts that are going to go all the way through the bracket and secure the bracket to the bowl assembly. There's a square feature on the back where the gear reduction drive is. It's going to clamp right on that. I will note there's two orientations. I have this bullet feeder installed per Mark 7 instructions. On a Dillon unit, it's going to be 180 degrees clocked. Bullet feeder is likely going to be on the other end of the unit. The instructions will show you the correct orientation for something like a Dillon press. Next, we install the dropper assembly, and I found this easier to do with the upper portion removed. There's just a single set screw to loosen, and you can lift that upper portion off. Now you've got essentially just the feed die itself. Place a flared case in the bullet feed station. Place about 5 bullets base down into the feed die and start to screw it in. We're going to lower the tool head into the feeding position and then continue to screw this die down into the press until we hear that stack of 5 bullets fall. Tighten it an additional quarter turn, tighten the lock ring, and that portion of the setup should be done. I validated by running a couple flared cases through the press and was happy with the result. Now we place the upper portion of the dropper assembly on and tighten the set screw. Next, the mounting bracket is slipped onto the bottom of the feed bowl, tightened in place, and then the bracket is hung on the side of the case feed bowl in the appropriate orientation, which I discussed previously. There's 2 screws on that bracket that secure it to the feed bowl, and then you can start to dial in the angle of the feed bowl appropriately. Next, we're going to take a look at the nose guide and the flip ramp. The nose guide is adjusted by means of stackable plates that are included with the Mr. Bullet Feeder system. You're going to want to take one of the bullets that you intend to feed through the feeder and place it face down where those plates are stacked. If the base of the bullet is pretty much flush with the top of the feed plate, you know that's adjusted approximately correct. Next, we're going to look at the flip ramp. The flip ramp can be adjusted towards the feed plate or away from it, and is used to ensure that bullets don't get bound, there's too much of a gap, and that they'll appropriately flip the bullet accordingly. And both of these adjustments were actually spot on when I took a look at this, but if you do have a problem with bullets not feeding correctly or jamming, you're going to want to take a look at both of those adjustments, which are spelled out in detail in the owner's manual. Next, it's time to install the output tube, the lead spring, and the adapter cap. The output tube slips up into the output port in the bottom of the feed bowl and is held in place with a Phillips screw. You want to make sure that you have the debris slot pointing down so that any debris can fall out of the way. My lead spring was a bit long, as indicated in the Mark 7 instructions for this particular configuration you have with the Evolution. So I took a look at the appropriate slack I needed, cut the spring to length, and then screwed it into the output tube and the adapter cap. The adapter cap slips over the top of the dropper assembly. There's a single set screw. It's in place. We're good to go with that. All right, we're in the home stretch now. There's a couple things to connect in terms of wiring. The first is the sensor that senses when the stack of bullets is full. There's a red wire and a black wire to connect there. And then I plugged the variable speed power supply into a 120 volt power source. I did notice that this kit came with both European plugs and the US plugs. Of course, I used the US plug. Plugged the power socket into the jack up near the feed bowl and then routed my wiring accordingly. This is the exciting moment. Time to pour some bullets in and turn the unit on and see how these bullets are going to feed. After I let everything settle in, I noticed things fed quickly. I didn't have any bullets in the inverted orientation, so it looks like we're good to go to run up the press and start loading. So I got everything installed, adjusted, everything is fine-tuned, and this system is running awesome now. Before we go into that full progressive loading with the bullet feed and the case feed, I wanted to touch on a couple things. First is the primary adjustment points for all of the different components in the bullet feed system for Mr. Bullet Feeder. Then I also wanted to talk about the components that I'm using for this particular loading session. So the first adjustment occurs before you even get to the bullet feed station, and that's the case mouth flare. I talked about how to adjust the case mouth flare in the overview and setup video for the Evolution, but the basic idea is you want enough case mouth flare so that the bullets are going to sit tightly in the case mouth, but you don't want so much that you're over fatiguing the brass and your bullets are tipping all over the place. The second set of adjustments comes in the dropper tube assembly itself. There's the dropper tube die, and it has two adjustments: the height in the press, and then also there's two positions for 3 ball bearings. The ball bearings are specific to each caliber. The lower set for 9mm are optimal for lighter bullets, like 90 grain bullets. Those are the ones that are lowest in this feeder die. The upper set are basically good for everything else. And since I'm loading 124 grain bullets, I moved those ball bearings to the upper set of holes, reassembled the dropper tube die, and got it adjusted in the press. The height will dictate how the release works. And if you have it too high in the press, it's not going to release a bullet reliably. If it's too low in the press, it could potentially double feed bullets. And if it's adjusted just right, it should perform perfect every single time. So once you've got that all dialed in, there's a couple things with the actual feed bowl. One is the angle of the feed bowl, and I got that right the first time. And then there's the nose guide and the bullet flip ramp. You can make adjustments to both of those. I won't go into minute detail on that because it's covered in the manual and in the double alpha troubleshooting videos that you'll find online. Also, click on that first link in the video description for this video, and I'll have some links to those resources and other things. So when you go through systematically and get all of this set up, you're ready to roll. So let me next talk about the components. So for components, I changed things up a little bit compared to the first video I did covering the Evolution. We're still loading 9mm. We're still using the Berry's 124 grain hollow-based round nose plated bullets. These things are absolutely awesome. But I switched from brand new Starline 9mm brass to this Capital cartridge previously fired brass. I have 10,000 previously fired cases here. By the way, if you want to save 10% on Capital cartridge brass, you can do so with the Ultimate code. Click on that first link in the video description for more info on that. I wanted to give this bullet feeder more of a test. I wanted different wall thickness. I wanted different length going through here to see how reliably this bullet feed system would work with those variations. Still using the Federal number 100 small pistol primers. Those have been working good. I did have an issue with the CFE pistol when I was first testing this double alpha magnetic powder check, and that was some clinging to the tamping rod. And that can happen with smaller granules of powder, if they're ball powder or flattened ball powder. This Vidivori N340, the granules are more like short stick. They're quite a bit bigger, each of the individual granules. And since switching to this powder, I have had zero issues with clinging and with dispersing the clung powder all over the shell plate and the press frame. So that's a huge improvement. And then an added benefit was, an added bonus, I shot both sets of ammo, the CFE pistol load, which was 5 grains of CFE pistol, and the 4.9 grains of Vidivori N340, and I found similar velocity, about 1050, 1070, somewhere in that range. I'm not quite up to max load with either of these. But where the CFE pistol had a standard deviation about in the mid-20s, the Vidivori N340 had a standard deviation for 10 shots of just over 10 feet per second, which is pretty amazing considering that's getting up towards match rifle type specifications. The beauty of this setup is every time we pull the handle, we get a completed cartridge, and I don't have to do any case insertion, any bullet placement. Love it. Now I'm loading ammo in a hurry. It's going to take me a while to box all this ammo up, but I absolutely love it. My question is, what do you think of this setup? What do you think of the Evolution, the Mr. Bullet Feeder, the components I'm using? Please drop a comment and we'll start a discussion. And don't forget, I've got a lot more related content coming up. The next story featuring the Evolution will be changing over the caliber from 9mm to .223 and 5.56, and we're going to take a look at the swaging rod setup to remove the military crimps from 5.56 brass. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications so you don't miss any of that content. Until next time, happy shooting and happy reloading.